Hello and welcome. My guest today is one of India's most articulate liberal thinkers. At the recently concluded Jaipur Literature Festival, he held center stage with his views on religion, on the ugly circumstances that prevented Salman Rushdie from attending, and between all that, with his new book of poetry. Please welcome one of my favorite conversationalists, Javed Akhtar.
Thank you.
Javed Saab, let's start with the good stuff, and that is a book of poems after more than what, 15 years? Lava will be your second book of poems after Tarkash.
15 years, more or less 15 years.
So thematically, for a poet, when you decide you have enough to put out as a book, how different is Tarkash from Lava or Lava from Tarkash?
Well, like Tarkash, Lava is also a collection of my poems that I have written over so many years.
Yeah.
Poems and ghazals. And obviously they are on different topics, so it's a kind of a eclectic collection of my poems and ghazals. Now, when I look back, it was not intentional, but when I give it a second look, I realized that there is a difference. Tarkash was my first Peshkash, and there was a lot of nostalgia in it. Thinking of the childhood and the house that I had lived in my childhood, and mother, and so on and so forth. Now, perhaps the poetry has taken one step forward. It's much more objective. It's looking around instead of looking back. And although even Tarkash had poems about social injustice or women's emancipation or time, but in this book I feel that this is more dominant than the personal reflection.
The book will be available in bookstores in a week, 2 weeks'
Within a
time.
week.
You read out some poems there, and I was very moved by this poem called Asu.
Thank you.
Instead of keeping it for the end, I want you to quote from that poem, because you have a prodigious memory. You know everything,
Yeah,
everything you've written
all
and read.
my poetry by heart, so I don't have to read it out. आंसू. किसी का गम सुन के मेरी पलकों पे एक आंसू जो आ गया है, ये आंसू क्या है? ये आंसू क्या एक गवाह है मेरी दर्दमंदी का, मेरी इंसान दोस्ती का? ये आंसू क्या एक सबूत है मेरी ज़िंदगी में खुलूस की एक रोशनी का? ये आंसू क्या ये बता रहा है कि मेरे सीने में एक हसास दिल है, जो कि किसी की दिलदोज़ दास्तां जो सुनी तो सुन के तड़प उठा है, पराए शोलों में जल रहा है, पिघल रहा है. मगर मैं फिर खुद से पूछता हूँ, ये दास्तां तो अभी सुनी है, ये आंसू भी क्या अभी ढला है? ये आंसू क्या मैं ये समझूं पहले कहीं नहीं था? मुझे तो शक है कि ये कहीं था. ये मेरे दिल और मेरी पलकों के दरमियाँ एक जो फासला है, जहाँ ख़यालों के शहर बसते हैं और ख्वाबों की तुरबतें हैं, जहाँ मोहब्बत के उजड़े बागों में तलखियों के बबूल हैं और कुछ नहीं है, जहाँ से आगे हैं उलझनों के घनेरे जंगल, ये आंसू शायद बहुत दिनों से वहीं छुपा था. जिन्होंने इसको जन्म दिया था वो रंज तो मसलहत एक्सपीडियंसी, वो रंज, सरोज, जिन्होंने इसको जन्म दिया था वो रंज तो मसलहत के हाथों न जाने कब कत्ल हो गए थे. तो करता फिर किस पे नाज आंसू कि हो गया बेजवाज आंसू, यतीम आंसू, यसीर आंसू, न मोत पर था न रास्तों ही से बाखबर था. तो चलते चलते वो थम गया था, झिझक गया था, ठिठक गया था. इधर से आज किसी के गम की कहानी का कारवां जो गुजरा, यतीम आंसू ने जैसे जाना कि इस कहानी की सरपरस्ती मिले तो मुमकिन है राह पाना. तो एक कहानी की उंगली थामे उसी के गम को रुमाल करता, उसी के बारे में झूठे सच्चे सवाल करता, ये मेरी पलकों तक आ गया है.
Javed Saab, this is one of the most profound thoughts I have heard in recent times, and it
Thank
was
you.
so beautiful.
Thank you.
I wish I could express my appreciation more eloquently, but I
Thank
think
you.
you've understood how impactful that poem is. You know, I saw the response that you poets, authors got at the Jaipur Literature Festival. When you were there, when you look around and you see intellectuals, liberals, we hope, book lovers, if not anything else, do you feel a sense of, you know what, everything is right with the world, there is hope?
I don't feel that everything is right with the world. Things are so wrong with the world that they even start reflecting on these occasions also. But there is hope. Yes, there is. We should never lose hope. As a matter of fact, what is happening, Anuradha, and it's a matter of extreme concern. And I am afraid that nobody is bothered about it. And people who matter, people who can make a difference, are totally unconcerned, indifferent, unaware perhaps. While on one hand we are moving forward materially, I mean the standard of living of urban middle class has gone up by miles, I can say. But somewhere we are losing something, that is aesthetics, culture, tradition,
Tolerance.
tolerance and tehzeeb. We are totally disconnected with the literature, with the folk music, folk dances, poetry.
To take this thought further, the Hindi movies or the movies in general, something better than most people, are the most potent and obvious form of culture, isn't it? Would you put this charge at the door of cinema? That culture today, if you're saying, is diluted.
Cinema sometimes, I'm afraid, is given the kind of compliment or respect that it hardly deserves. I wonder if cinema is that powerful. As a matter of fact, because ultimately it's a commercial endeavor, people who are making film are looking toward the society, and they are looking at the society, what do they want, and there is a kind of a desperate salesmanship there. So it is the society that is governing the cinema. When the middle class was educated, tradition bound, had some kind of connect with the rural India, you had films like Do Bigha Zameen and Mother India or Ganga Jamna or Jis Desh Mein Ganga Bahti Hai. When the middle class became totally indigenous, without any connection with rural India vanished. When the language changed in society, the language of cinema also changed.
Javed sir, let's go back to the Jaipur Literature Festival. I didn't want to start with the obvious question, and that was the absence of Salman Rushdie. Now, you have told me in the past that when it comes to the minority community, the truth is that a fringe view gets accepted as the representation of the entire community. This is a theory that you believe in. This is something that you've said to me in the past. Do you think what happened with Salman Rushdie, the fact that circumstances were created which did not allow him to come, do you think that was a shot in the arms, a victory for the fringe element over the vast majority of the minority community?
These are the questions which are, this whole issue is in a grey area, and there are no simple answers. You can't say yes, you can't say no. You can't say this is wrong, you can't say this is right, or vice versa. We have to be very sensitive about these things. What is important for everybody to understand the difference between the book and the writer. If I make a film which is outrageous, the film will be banned. But then I am allowed to make another film which hopefully will not be that outrageous. You can't ban me, you can't ban the director, you ban the film. So the book was banned. Now, on both the sides, the same mistake has been committed. People who were against Salman Rushdie were clubbing Salman Rushdie with one particular book. And people who ultimately stood up for him also did the same thing by reading from a book which was banned. What is important to tell and emphasize that, listen, you have anything against that book, the government of India has banned it. If somebody has any problem, they should go and sue the government. Why have you banned that book? Fine, that is another topic. But if the book is banned, why are you banning the writer? And if the book is banned, why are you reading that particular book? It means you also club Salman Rushdie with
only that book.
only with that book.
That's an interesting perspective.
What you have done has justified the fundamentalist. Because that is what he was saying. There is no difference between Salman Rushdie and Satanic Verses. And since Satanic Verses is banned, Salman Rushdie should not come. All of us were saying Satanic Verses is different. Salman Rushdie is another person. Now by reading this book, these writers said no, the fundamentalist is right. Salman Rushdie and Satanic Verses are the same thing.
My original question, Javed Saab, which is that do you think that the fact that that fundamentalist demand went through, which is that Salman Rushdie did not make it to this festival, the government went along with this, did not instill any confidence in bringing him here, do you think that's a shot in the arm for this extra constitutional, extra legal attempts to stifle and censor?
It has not surprised me at all.
No, but is it a shot in the arms for the fundamentalist fringe?
This is what happens all the time. So what is new about it?
Yeah.
Every time the fundamentalist, the right wing of any community, gets up and demands the society accept that. Society surrenders.
Do you feel like a lot of political commentators believe that this was directly connected to the UP elections and all politicians who had a role to play in this had an eye on the UP elections and the Muslim vote that they were quoting there?
It doesn't appeal to my common sense. You know, by and large the media and people were accusing the ruling party. Now crimes are detected by the motive and the gain. What could be the motive and what is the gain? Ultimately, the ruling party in Rajasthan has lost face. They were in a no-win situation. If they had given complete protection to, say, the reading of Satanic Verses, they would have lost a certain segment of voters. When they did not protect these people, then too they lost a certain segment of voters. It is not that it did not make any difference at all. Some people were, people like you, were disgusted by that.
So you don't buy the argument that it's linked to...
At least the ruling, I honestly think that a ruling party was put in a quandary, was in an embarrassing situation, in a no-win situation.
So you would say it's cowardice and not politics?
Yeah.
More cowardice and less politics?
Again, if they had done it, then too they would have lost some votes. If they did not do it, they have lost some votes.
But if you continue with the conversation on UP and the Muslim vote, because that seems to be dominating the kind of news that is coming out of there.
First of all, you see, anybody who says that has a very low opinion of Muslims. Because the assumption that is started, that on one hand it is said a small fringe does that. On the other hand, it will reflect on the votes of Muslims in UP. So what do you think of Muslims of UP? This very assumption that it was done because it would have affected Muslim vote is saying that all the Muslims think like that. In other words, the fact is that an average Muslim of UP is bothered about employment, about education, about health, about infrastructure like anybody else.
How do you react to what the Congress government in the centre has promised, which is the 4.5% minority quota within the OBC quota, announced in December, again before the elections? So do you think that is affirmative action which is good, or do you think that is, identity politics at its worst?
You see,
because these are very complex issues.
It is said that there should not be any reservation on religious lives. I totally, unconditionally support this. There should not be any reservation on religious life. Now I want to ask, here is a man from scheduled caste or a tribal who gives reservation because Since centuries, for millennia, he has been exploited and repressed. This man becomes a Muslim or a Christian. Why does he lose the right to reservation? It means it is on religious lines. You can get this reservation only as long as you are Hindu. If you get converted, your history changes of 1,000 years. Of course it doesn't. That is why I believe that it should not be on religious grounds. Anybody who is repressed, anybody who is backward should get the reservation. At the moment, only the repressed, the depressed, the downtrodden of Hindu community gets this right. And this is on religious grounds. It should stop.
You have explained to me how it's important for secular people to go out and make statements, because it's almost like a responsibility to articulate your view and take people along towards the rational, towards therefore hopefully the right. Do you feel you are in that battle that is being waged between secular, liberal, fundamentalist, religious believers? Where do you think we are doing on that constant tug of war?
First of all, I'm not too sure that communalism can only survive in religiosity. There are people, and there have been people who are atheists, who had no religious beliefs as such, but they were communal. I think it is totally possible to be communal in spite of being irreligious. But it is very difficult to be secular in spite of being religious. So there is communalism in our society. Communalism is an irrational, beside being indecent, it is irrational attitude also. To believe that people of such and such community are like that, A or B community. It's like believing people of such and such city are like that. In every city, all kind of people live.
Yeah.
In the same way, in every community, there are all kind of people. But to turn them into a monolith, whether I do it with Allahabad, or Sangli, or Parsis, or Muslims, or Sikhs, or Hindus, is the same thing.
Do you think we are less liberal today? Hypersensitive, less liberal. Do you think those are some adjectives and labels that can be applied to Indian society today, contemporary Indian society? I know you've just said it's not a monolith.
Yeah, but at the same time, I think by and large the society has become more ruthless, more aggressive in attitudes. And when it suits us, we are as liberal can be. And when it suits us, we can be extremely conservative. If we get away by repressing somebody, we will not miss that opportunity. But if you realize that it won't work, then you are a fair person. That is how it has become. The situation is not very healthy. As a matter of fact, as people, somewhere we are losing a basic value system.
Are the liberals winning the war, or are the fundamentalists winning the war? Where do you see it? Because it is a war.
You see,
it's an unholy war.
It is impossible for the fundamentalist to win the war. The fundamentalist has never won the war. Human history is the witness that at any given time there have been liberals and fundamentalists. But ultimately, time favors liberals, and that is how human society has moved forward. Conservative is a person who believes that nothing should happen for the first time. So if they would have won the war, we would have been sitting in the caves, or maybe on the trees.
Javed Saab, on that optimistic note, I'm going to say thank you very much for your time, and I wish you all the very best.
Thank you.